The night was quiet but not peaceful. Snow fell in heavy sheets outside the small wooden cabin, covering the dark forest in white silence. Inside, a single lamp burned weakly, throwing shadows across the rough walls. The young soldier sat at the table, his rifle leaning nearby. He was supposed to be resting, but his mind refused to sleep. He had left the war, or at least he thought so. Out here, far from the cities, he wanted only silence. No orders, no screaming officers, no blood. Just the sound of wind outside and the fire crackling inside. But silence does not always mean safety. A sound came from outside. Scratch. At first, he thought it was only the storm moving branches. But then it came again, scratch, scratch. He froze, his hand reaching for the rifle. The forest was full of strange things these days. Wild animals driven mad by hunger, deserters from the war, even government patrols hunting illegal creatures. He knew better than to open the door. And yet, the sound was not angry. It was weak, like something or someone was trying to knock but had no strength. The soldier stood slowly and walked to the door. His breath formed a mist in the cold air. He pressed his ear against the wood. Silence. Then, another faint scratch. He gripped the handle, ready to shoot if it was a trick. With one swift motion, he pulled the door open. The storm rushed inside, icy wind cutting his face. Snowflakes danced in the lamplight. For a moment, he saw nothing. Only white. Then he looked down. A shape lay on the ground. Small, curled up. Covered in frost, not human. His breath caught in his throat. It was a girl, but not like any girl he had seen before. Her skin was pale blue, glowing faintly under the snow. Her hair was silver, sticking to her frozen face. Strange patterns like stars marked her forehead. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She was alive. Barely. The soldier stared, torn between fear and pity. He had heard stories of aliens being hunted. The government called them dangerous, but rumor said many were refugees from destroyed worlds. He had never believed he would see one, and now, one was dying at his doorstep. The smart choice was to leave her. Or maybe finish her off before anyone saw. If the patrols found her here, he would be executed. Helping aliens was a crime. But as he looked at her small body shaking in the snow, something inside him refused to walk away. He cursed under his breath, bent down, and lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her skin icy against his. The glowing patterns on her forehead pulsed weakly like a dying star. He kicked the door shut and carried her to the bed. Her clothes were torn, her body scratched as if she had run through miles of forest. Around her neck hung a strange pendant glowing faintly green. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her. Then he sat by the bed, staring at the alien girl he had just invited into his home. What had he done? The girl's eyes flickered open. They were large and silver, like liquid metal. She looked at him with confusion and fear. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Only a weak breath that misted in the air. "Don't speak," he whispered, not even sure if she understood. "You're safe. For now." She blinked slowly, as if hearing his voice gave her a little strength. Then she closed her eyes again, slipping into unconsciousness. The soldier leaned back, running a hand over his face. His heart hammered in his chest. He had broken the law. If anyone found her here, he was finished. He tried to tell himself it was only for the night. He would give her water, let her rest, then decide what to do. But deep inside, he knew there was no going back. The storm raged on outside, hiding the cabin from the world. But the world would not stay away for long. The next morning, he awoke to the sound of footsteps, not hers. Heavy boots outside. Voices. "Check this cabin," a soldier said. The young man's blood turned to ice. He looked toward the bed, empty. For a terrifying second, he thought she had left. Then he heard it. Faint, quick breaths coming from below. She had crawled under the floorboards. Somehow she understood the danger. The door burst open. 2 armed men stepped inside, snow clinging to their uniforms. Their eyes scanned the room. "You live here alone?" one asked. "Yes," the young soldier replied, forcing calm into his voice. The other man's eyes narrowed. He looked at the half-burned fire, the second set of footprints by the door. "Strange," he muttered. "Tracks lead here, but not away." The soldier's hand tightened on the rifle at his side. Below the floor, the alien girl struggled to breathe quietly. If she made a sound, if she moved even once, they would both die. The room fell into silence. Only the ticking of the old clock on the wall could be heard, and then the alien sneezed. The soldier's heart stopped when the alien sneezed. It was soft, almost like the sound of a kitten, but in the silence of the cabin it felt like thunder. The two soldiers inside froze. Their hands went to their weapons. What was that? One whispered. The young man forced himself to stay calm. He coughed loudly, patting his chest. Sorry, cold air makes my chest tight. The patrolman looked at him for a long moment. Snow dripped from their boots onto the wooden floor. The second soldier took a step closer, eyes sharp, scanning every shadow. The young man's finger twitched near his rifle. If they searched under the floorboards, everything would end here. Finally, the first soldier shook his head. Waste of time. Let's move. Tracks must have blown away in the storm. With heavy steps, they turned and left. The door closed behind them, letting silence return to the cabin. The young soldier stood still for several breaths, his whole body trembling. Only when the voices faded outside did he kneel by the floorboards and whisper, "It's safe now." "Come out," the board shifted. A pale hand appeared, fingers trembling. Slowly, the alien girl crawled out, her silver eyes wide with fear. She was shaking, not just from cold, but from the terror of being discovered. He helped her up and guided her back to the bed. "You almost got us both killed," he muttered, but there was no anger in his voice. She tilted her head, not understanding his words, but she seemed to read his expression. Her lips moved, forming strange sounds in a language he couldn't know. For the first time, he realized she was trying to speak to him. That night, while the wind howled outside, the girl sat at the table, wrapped in his old jacket. She was still weak, but stronger than before. Her hands shook as she dipped a piece of charcoal into the fire's ash and began to draw on the wooden table. The soldier leaned closer. At first he thought she was scribbling nonsense. Then he saw the shapes, circles, lines, small dots arranged in patterns. Stars. She was drawing star maps. Her silver eyes flickered toward him as if asking, "Do you understand?" He didn't. But he nodded anyway because he didn't want her to stop. She pressed her glowing pendant to the map and the ash lines shimmered faintly. The light pulsed, spreading across the shapes like a heartbeat. The young man stared in awe. Whoever she was, she came from far beyond this world. Days passed. He kept her hidden, bringing food and water in secret. Each night soldiers searched the woods, their lights cutting through the darkness, but they never came inside again. The alien girl learned small things. She copied his gestures, tried to mimic his words, though her voice was faint and broken. She touched objects carefully, as if the human world was fragile. But there was something else. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, she shivered violently. Her skin glowed faint blue, patterns racing across her arms like fire beneath glass. She would curl up, whispering in her strange tongue, clutching her pendant as if it could save her. The soldier would cover her with blankets, pressing water to her lips, but nothing helped. It was not sickness. It was something deeper, something written in her very blood. One night she screamed. He woke instantly, grabbing his rifle, thinking soldiers had returned. But the sound came from her. She was on the floor, her body shaking, light bursting from her skin. He dropped the rifle and ran to her side. "Stay still, you're safe." Her silver eyes opened wide, glowing faintly in the dark. She looked at him, not with fear, but with desperate need. She grabbed his wrist, holding it against her chest. Her heart pounded, racing faster than any human's. Then, just as suddenly, she let go and slumped, breathing hard. The soldier stared at her, shaken. He had seen death, war, and wounds that no one should survive, but he had never seen anything like this. Whatever was happening to her, it was not ordinary. The next morning, he tried to act as if nothing had happened. He chopped wood, fixed the roof, cooked stew. But his eyes kept returning to the alien girl. She sat near the fire, staring at him with those silver eyes. Not empty, not weak, watching. When he set the bowl of food in front of her, she touched his hand briefly, her skin warm. She whispered a single sound, soft, broken, but clear. "Safe." The word struck him like a blade. She had spoken in his language. She understood. He knelt down, searching her face. "Safe," he repeated, pointing to himself, then to her. She smiled faintly, and for the first time she looked less like a dying stranger and more like someone who belonged. But even as warmth filled the cabin, he knew it would not last. The soldiers would return. The girl's strange glowing fits were getting worse. And deep inside he felt it. Something was changing in her. Something dangerous. That night, as he tried to sleep, he was awakened by silence. No storm, no wind. The bed was empty. His heart lurched. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The snow crunched beneath his boots, then he saw them. Glowing footprints leading into the dark forest. The forest was silent except for the crunch of snow beneath his boots. The soldier followed the glowing footprints, each one faint but clear, like drops of light left behind in the dark. His breath came in clouds, his rifle clutched tightly. He knew the patrols were near, and yet he could not leave her out there. The footprints led deeper into the trees where the shadows grew heavy. Branches bent low under the weight of snow, their shapes like twisted arms. He could see her steps growing uneven, the glow sometimes strong, sometimes fading, as if her strength was slipping away. Finally, he saw her. The alien girl knelt in the snow, her body shaking violently. Her silver hair glowed faintly under the moonlight, and her skin pulsed with strange light running across her veins like fire trapped in glass. "Hey," he whispered harshly, rushing to her side. She looked up, her silver eyes wide and wild. She gasped, pushing him away with surprising force. "No," the soldier froze. She had spoken again, a single human word but filled with panic. Her body bent forward, her hands clawing at the ground. The snow hissed beneath her palms as if heat burned from her skin. She groaned, her voice rising into a sound that was almost a scream. He reached for her, but she shoved him back. Her strength was terrifying for someone so small. "What's happening to you?" he whispered. His heart pounded as he watched her glowing veins. She shook her head, unable to explain, but the look in her eyes told him enough. This was no sickness. It was something deeper, something natural and dangerous. The sound of voices cut through the night. "Over here. Do you see that light?" The soldier's stomach dropped. Hunters. Not the government patrol this time, but worse. Local men who sold alien parts on the black market. They had seen her glow. He pulled the alien girl to her feet. "We have to move now!" She stumbled, her body weak, but he held her up. Together they staggered through the trees, her light flashing with every painful step. The hunters' voices grew louder. "It's close. Bring the net." Snow broke under heavy boots. Dogs barked, howling through the night. The soldier dragged her toward a rocky slope. At the base he found a narrow crack in the stone, barely big enough to hide in. He shoved her inside and pressed a finger to his lips. "Quiet." She nodded, her chest heaving, her body trembling with heat. The glow dimmed as she forced herself still. Moments later, lantern light washed across the trees. 3 hunters passed, rifles slung across their shoulders, nets coiled at their sides. The dogs sniffed the snow, growling, pulling their handlers forward. The soldier pressed himself flat against the rock, rifle ready. His finger itched on the trigger, but he knew one shot would bring more of them. He could only wait, heart racing as the hunters searched the snow. "Tracks here," one said. "Fresh. We're close." They moved past the crack, their shadows stretching long in the lamplight. For a terrifying moment, one of the dogs stopped, nose turning toward the hidden alien girl. It growled low, pulling on its leash. The hunter yanked the dog forward. "Come on, if she was here, we'd see her glow." Their footsteps faded. The forest grew quiet again. The soldier let out a long breath. He crawled back into the crack where the girl was curled up, her silver eyes shining with fear and exhaustion. "You almost got us killed," he whispered, though his voice was more tired than angry. She shook her head weakly. "Not safe." Her words were broken but clear. "I know," he said. "But you can't just run off into the night." Her glowing skin dimmed slowly. She clutched her pendant tight to her chest, whispering words in her own language, her voice trembling like prayer. By dawn, they made it back to the cabin. The soldier laid her on the bed, his own body shaking from exhaustion. He watched her as she slept, her glow faint but steady now, her breath even. He thought of the hunters, of the patrols, of the danger pressing closer each day. He should have turned her in the moment she appeared. He should have stayed out of this, but when she stirred in her sleep, whispering softly, he knew he could not. She trusted him, and somehow he felt bound to her. That evening she awoke. Her eyes found him instantly. She sat up slowly, reaching for his hand. When her fingers touched his, he felt warmth, different from fire, deeper, almost alive. She pointed to herself. Lyra, he blinked. Lyra? She nodded. Lyra. Then she pointed at him, tilting her head curiously. He hesitated, then said, Ethan, she repeated softly. Then. Her voice was shaky, but her smile was real. For a moment, the cabin no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like something else. But outside in the dark woods, the hunters were not gone. They were setting traps, waiting for her light to return. And Ethan knew the next time her strange change came, hiding might not be enough. The fire in the cabin burned low, but Ethan could not rest. Every sound outside made him tense. The crack of ice, the wind pushing against the walls, the faint call of crows in the distance. He had lived through war, but this fear was different. This was not about his own life. It was about hers. Lyra slept near the fire, wrapped in blankets, her silver hair spread across the pillow. Her breathing was calm, but her skin still glowed faintly, as if light lived beneath her flesh. Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before it returned, the strange fever, the heat, the light. And when it did, the hunters would see her again. He leaned his head against the cold wall, rifle across his knees. He had sworn never to fight again, but now he was preparing for it. Just before dawn, he heard the dogs. They were distant, their howls cutting through the trees, but he knew they were closer than last time. The hunters had not given up. They were tightening their circle. Ethan shook Lyra awake. Her silver eyes opened slowly, heavy with sleep, then widened at the sound of barking outside. She clutched her pendant, her lips whispering in her language. We have to move, Ethan said. Now. She tried to stand but stumbled, her legs weak. Her skin glowed brighter with each step, betraying them. Ethan cursed under his breath, pulling her arm over his shoulder. Together they stepped into the freezing morning air. The snow crunched beneath their boots, their breath fogging the air. They didn't make it far. A voice shouted from the trees. There, the glow! Ethan's blood turned cold. He pulled Lyra behind a fallen log just as gunfire cracked through the air, bullets splintering bark. She pressed against him, shaking, her light pulsing stronger with fear. The hunters were closing in. He could hear their boots thudding through the snow, their dogs snarling. Run when I say, Ethan whispered. But before he could move, Lyra gasped and fell to her knees. Her whole body shook violently, her veins glowing bright blue. Her breath came fast and ragged. She clawed at the snow as if fighting something inside her. Lyra. Ethan tried to lift her, but she pushed him back with sudden force. Her silver eyes blazed, her skin burning hot to the touch, then he saw it. Her nails had lengthened, sharp like claws. Her teeth shone faintly in the moonlight. She was changing. The hunters broke through the trees. 3 men, rifles raised, nets ready. There she is! One shouted, but before they could strike, Lyra screamed. The sound was not human. It was sharp, powerful, filled with pain and rage. The glow burst from her body, lighting up the forest like fire. Snow melted around her as if heat poured from her skin. The dogs yelped and backed away, tails between their legs. The hunters froze, their faces pale. Then Lyra moved. Faster than Ethan could believe, she lunged at the nearest man. Her glowing claws tore through his rifle, snapping it like wood. The man screamed as she knocked him to the ground, her silver eyes blazing with hunger. The other 2 hunters shouted and raised their weapons, but Ethan fired first. His rifle cracked, the shot echoing through the trees. One hunter fell, the other dove for cover. Lyra, stop! Ethan shouted, running toward her, but she didn't stop. She pinned the man to the snow, her glowing mouth open, her body shaking as if driven by something beyond her control. The man screamed again, his voice echoing in the forest. Ethan grabbed her shoulders, pulling her back with all his strength. Enough, you'll kill him! For a moment she resisted. Her claws hovered inches from the hunter's throat. Her glowing eyes locked on Ethan's, wild and desperate. Then slowly she pulled back, gasping for breath. The surviving hunter dragged his injured friend into the trees, stumbling away in terror. Their shouts faded into the distance, leaving only silence and the smell of burned snow. Lyra collapsed against Ethan, her body trembling. Her glow dimmed slowly, but her eyes still burned with something strange, something new. He looked at her hands. The claws were fading, her skin returning to normal, but her body was still hot against his. What's happening to you? He whispered. She pressed her forehead to his chest, whispering one broken word. Hunger. Ethan's stomach twisted. She wasn't just sick. She wasn't just different. Her body needed something dangerous. He pulled her close, his rifle heavy in his other hand. He knew the hunters would return, and next time they wouldn't run. They would come with more men, more weapons, and worse. He wasn't sure if Lyra could control herself when the hunger returned. That night, back in the cabin, Ethan sat awake while Lyra slept. Her face looked peaceful, almost human in the firelight, but he couldn't forget what he had seen. The claws, the speed, the way she had nearly killed a man without hesitation. He told himself she was not a monster. She was only fighting to survive. But deep inside, he feared what her strange season was turning her into. Outside in the distance, he heard the hunters' horns echo through the forest. They would come again. And next time, there would be no running. The snow was falling again, soft and slow, covering the forest in white silence. Ethan sat near the fire, his rifle across his knees, his eyes fixed on the sleeping girl. Lyra lay curled in the blankets, her silver hair spread across the pillow, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. She looked peaceful, almost human, almost innocent, but Ethan couldn't forget what had happened the night before. The claws, the glowing eyes, the scream that had shaken the forest. He had seen men turn into killers in war, but nothing like that. Nothing that fast. Nothing that wild. He told himself she was still the same girl who had whispered safe to him. He told himself she was fighting something she could not control. But deep inside, doubt was growing like ice. It happened again 2 nights later. Ethan woke to the sound of crunching snow outside. He grabbed his rifle, moving quietly to the window. Shadows moved between the trees. The hunters were back. He cursed under his breath and turned to wake Lyra. But she was already standing, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Her pendant pulsed like a heartbeat, her whole body trembling with heat. "Lyra," Ethan whispered. "Stay down. Don't make a sound," but she didn't listen. Her body moved as if pulled by something stronger than fear, stronger than reason. She opened the door and stepped out into the snow, her glow spilling into the night. "Damn it," Ethan hissed, rushing after her. The hunters saw her instantly. There, light ahead. Their rifles cracked, bullets sparking against trees. Lyra screamed, not in fear, but in fury. The glow burst from her skin, bright and wild, flooding the clearing. Ethan dove behind a tree, returning fire. He shot one man's lantern, plunging part of the forest into shadow. But it was too late. The dogs were already loose, barking furiously, charging toward Lyra. She didn't run. She crouched low, her claws forming again, her teeth gleaming like blades. When the first dog leapt at her, she tore it from the air in one swift motion. The animal yelped once before falling still, snow darkening beneath it. The hunters shouted in rage. They fired wildly, but Lyra was faster. She moved like light itself, weaving through the trees, her claws flashing. Ethan tried to stop her. "Lyra, don't." But then it happened. One hunter screamed. Ethan turned and saw Lyra on top of him, her claws sunk deep into his chest. Blood sprayed across the snow, black under the moonlight. Her silver eyes glowed brighter as she leaned close, her mouth opening as if to taste the very life leaving him. The man struggled, choking, his cries echoing through the forest. "Lyra!" Ethan shouted, running forward. He grabbed her shoulders, yanking her back with all his strength. For a moment she fought him. Her claws clung to the man's body, her teeth flashing inches from his throat. Then, with a sound like a snarl, she released him. The hunter collapsed into the snow, unmoving. Blood spread around him like ink on paper. Ethan's heart pounded. His hands shook as he looked from the dead man to the glowing girl in his arms. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling violently. Blood stained her lips, her claws, her silver hair. But when she looked at Ethan, her eyes softened. The wildfire dimmed and she whispered a single word. "Mine." The forest was silent except for Ethan's racing heartbeat. The other hunters had fled, dragging their wounded with them. They had seen enough. Ethan looked down at Lyra. She was shaking, but not from cold. From hunger. From something primal that burned inside her. He wiped the blood from her face with his sleeve. She leaned into his touch, her silver eyes watching him with strange devotion. He should have been afraid. He should have run, but he didn't. Back at the cabin, he sat by the fire with her in his arms. She had fallen asleep, her glow fading, her claws gone. She looked fragile again, like the dying girl he had first found in the snow. But Ethan could not erase the image of her tearing the hunter apart. He had seen death before, but this was different. This was no soldier's kill. This was something. Hungry? He stared into the fire, his thoughts heavy. How long before she lost control again? How long before she turned that hunger on him? Yet even as fear twisted in his chest, he couldn't leave her. He thought of the way she had whispered his name, the way she had said mine. Somehow she had chosen him, and he wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse. Outside, the storm grew stronger, covering the dead hunter's blood with fresh snow. By morning, the forest would be clean again, but the hunters would return. And next time they would come not just for her, they would come for both of them. The storm broke at dawn. Snow still covered the forest, but the wind had died, leaving the trees silent and waiting. Ethan stood outside the cabin, rifle in hand, scanning the horizon. His boots crunched in the icy crust. Lyra was inside, resting, but he knew peace would not last. The hunters had fled after the last fight, but they would return with more men. And not just hunters this time, soldiers. The government would want her. They would not stop until they had her locked in chains or dead. Ethan's breath misted in the air as he whispered to himself, "They'll be here today." He was right. It began with the hum of engines, then the thunder of boots. From the ridge above the forest, armored vehicles rolled forward, their lights piercing the trees. Soldiers marched in lines, rifles raised, their dogs pulling at leashes. Drones buzzed overhead, red lights blinking. Ethan rushed inside. Lyra sat near the fire, clutching her pendant, her silver eyes already wide with fear. The glow in her veins had returned, brighter than before, pulsing like fire under her skin. "They found us," Ethan said. He pulled on his coat and grabbed his pack. "We can't stay." Lyra shook her head weakly. "No. Safe. I'll make it safe," he answered, pulling her to her feet. But not here. They slipped out the back door into the frozen trees. The snow was deep, each step slow and heavy. Ethan kept his rifle ready, his eyes searching the shadows. Lyra leaned against him, her body burning hot even in the cold. Behind them, the cabin shook with explosions. Fire burst through the roof as soldiers stormed inside. Ethan winced but didn't stop. "Go, faster!" he hissed. The forest lit up with searchlights. Dogs barked furiously. A voice shouted through a speaker, "Hand over the alien. You will not be harmed. Resist and you will be destroyed." Lyra stumbled, gasping. Her glow brightened, betraying them. Ethan dragged her behind a thick tree, pressing her against it. The light from her skin spilled into the snow. "Lyra, you have to control it," he whispered desperately. "Please." But her body shook violently, her silver eyes wide with fear and hunger. The first squad appeared between the trees, rifles raised. "There!" one shouted. Bullets tore through the branches. Bark exploded around them. Ethan fired back, dropping one soldier, but more came from both sides. "Run!" he shouted. They stumbled through the snow, breath ragged, heart pounding. Drones whirred overhead, their red beams scanning the ground. Ethan fired at one, shattering it, but another replaced it instantly. A spotlight cut across the forest, blinding them. The roar of engines grew closer. They were being surrounded. Suddenly, the forest itself caught fire. Flames roared as soldiers launched burning shells into the trees. Branches cracked and fell, sparks raining down like stars. Smoke filled the air, choking Ethan's lungs. The snow hissed and melted beneath the spreading fire. Ethan pulled Lyra close, shielding her from the falling ash. She clung to him, her glowing body trembling against his. "They want to burn us out," he muttered. Through the flames, soldiers advanced, their shadows long and menacing. Ethan raised his rifle, his teeth clenched. "Stay behind me." But Lyra shook her head. Her glow flared brighter, spilling like light through the smoke. Her silver eyes locked on the soldiers with something fierce, something untamed. "No, hurt Ethan," she whispered. Then the forest exploded with light. Her scream cut through the fire. The glow burst from her body, so bright the soldiers staggered back, shielding their eyes. Heat rolled across the snow, melting it into steam. Ethan stared in shock. She was changing again, her claws forming, her veins blazing like molten fire. But this time she stood taller, stronger, her fear burned away by fury. The soldiers opened fire. Bullets hissed through the air. But Lyra moved like lightning, her claws slashing, her voice a roar of rage. Ethan fought beside her, firing until his rifle clicked empty, then swinging it like a club. Together they cut through the circle of soldiers, desperate, wild, unstoppable. But for every soldier they dropped, more came, and in the distance, through the flames, Ethan saw it, an armored transport rolling forward. Its gun turret turning toward them. He knew they couldn't win. Not like this. not against the whole army. He grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her back into the smoke. We can't fight them all. We have to run. She hesitated, her silver eyes blazing, but then she nodded. Together they fled into the burning forest, the fire lighting their path. Behind them the soldiers shouted, the dogs howled. The engines roared. The chase was only beginning. That night, they found shelter in a cave deep in the mountains. Ethan collapsed against the wall, his chest heaving. Lyra sat beside him, her glow fading slowly, her body shaking from exhaustion. He looked at her, his heart heavy. She had saved him, but at what cost? Every time she changed, she became less like the fragile girl he had found in the snow, and more like something else, something powerful, something terrifying. She leaned against him, whispering in a broken voice, "Ethan, mine." He closed his eyes, holding her close, knowing the truth. The soldiers would not stop. The hunters would not stop. And maybe, just maybe, Lyra herself would not stop either. The cave was silent, except for the soft drip of water and the faint sound of Lyra's breathing. Ethan sat with his back against the stone wall, rifle across his lap. His eyes were heavy from lack of sleep, but he could not rest. Outside, in the snowy mountains, soldiers were still hunting. He had seen their lights sweeping through the trees, heard their radios crackling. They were closing in. Lyra lay beside him, her silver hair tangled, her skin glowing faintly in the dark. She looked fragile again, but Ethan knew it was only a mask. Beneath that quiet surface lived something powerful, something dangerous. He remembered the fire in her eyes, the claws tearing through soldiers, the scream that had lit up the forest. And yet here she was, whispering his name in her broken voice, clinging to him as if he was her only anchor. He brushed the hair from her face and whispered, "What are you, Lyra?" Her silver eyes opened slowly. She touched his chest with trembling fingers and whispered one word, "Mate." The word struck him harder than any bullet. She wasn't just surviving. She wasn't just running. She was choosing. She had chosen him. By morning, the soldiers found them. The sound of engines echoed through the valley. Drones buzzed outside the cave, red lights flickering. A voice boomed from a speaker, deep and commanding. "Soldier Ethan Cole, you are surrounded. Surrender the alien and you will be spared." Ethan's hands tightened on his rifle. His name. They knew exactly who he was. The voice grew harsher. "The alien is not your friend. She is a weapon. She will destroy everything you love. Hand her over and your life will be forgiven." Lyra stirred beside him, clutching his arm. Her silver eyes filled with fear, but also trust. She whispered weakly, "Ethan, stay." His chest ached. He looked down at her glowing skin, her fragile form, her trembling hands. She was not a weapon to him. She was a girl who had trusted him, who had whispered his name, who had chosen him in her final season. But outside, soldiers waited with guns, fire, and chains. The first explosion shook the cave. Rocks fell from the ceiling, dust filling the air. Soldiers were coming. Ethan helped Lyra to her feet. Her glow flared brighter, her body trembling with heat. He could feel her changing again, her claws pressing against his arm, her breath hot against his neck. "Lyra, don't," he whispered. "If you lose control now, they'll never stop hunting you." She shook her head, pressing her forehead against his chest. "Ethan, bond," he froze. The word was strange, heavy, filled with meaning he could only half understand. Bond. Not just mate, not just hunger. Something final. Something forever. Her pendant glowed between them, pulsing like a heartbeat. She pressed it to his chest and he felt heat surge into him, light spreading through his veins. His breath caught as if fire had entered his blood. The bond. She was giving it to him. Outside, soldiers shouted. Boots thundered closer. Ethan had to choose. The soldiers stormed the cave. Their rifles flashed in the dark, gunfire echoing against stone. Ethan stood in front of Lyra, his rifle raised. He fired until it was empty, then drew his knife, teeth clenched. But when the bullets tore through the air, Lyra screamed and the bond completed. Her glow burst outward, brighter than ever before. The cave filled with searing light. The soldiers staggered, blinded, their shots missing wildly. Heat rolled across the stone like a living wave. Ethan felt it too, the bond inside him. Her strength flowing into his blood, her heartbeat echoing in his chest. He was no longer just himself. He was part of her. Together they moved. Lyra's claws slashed through steel and stone, her scream shaking the cave. Ethan fought beside her, faster, stronger than he had ever been. They were not two anymore. They were one. The soldiers fell back in terror, shouting into radios, calling for retreat. The cave shook with fire and light until the last man fled into the snow. Silence returned. The glow dimmed slowly, leaving only the faint shimmer of Lyra's skin. She collapsed into Ethan's arms, her body weak, but her silver eyes soft and full of peace. He held her tightly, his chest still burning with the bond. He knew he could never return to his old life. Not to the army, not to the towns, not to humanity. He had chosen her. Ethan, she whispered faintly. I'm here, he said. Mine, she breathed, closing her eyes. He kissed her forehead, his arms wrapping around her. Yours, he whispered back. Outside, the snow fell softly, covering the tracks of soldiers, covering the blood, covering the fire. The world was white again, silent and waiting. But deep in the mountains, a human soldier and an alien girl held each other in the dark, bound by fire, by choice, by something greater than fear. The war outside would never stop, but neither would they, and for the first time Ethan understood what it meant. Humanity was not just about blood. It was about the choices you made, and he had chosen her. Forever.